Welcome to our Points of Light Community Forum today. It's good to have our guest, Union County, North Carolina State Senator Todd Johnson with us, and we're so glad that you're able to join us today on our webcast.
Glad to be here, Pastor. Thanks for having me.
Well, thank you for your service. We appreciate you serving our community and representing us there in Raleigh. I'd like for people just to get to know you a little bit more of who you are, what your background is, and tell us about yourself and your family.
I was born and raised in Wadesboro, North Carolina, so just a little ways east of here. I moved to Union County 20 years ago to work in the family business, the insurance business. We've got an office in downtown Monroe, and so that's where I'm based out of. So I've been working in the family business my whole life. So we started off in the turkey business. So I learned real quickly in life that turkeys don't celebrate birthdays or holidays or weekends or Christmas. And so when it come time to make a decision in what I was going to do, told my dad, Dad, I don't want to work in the turkey business. He said, well, son, you better go get an education. So I went off to college. I graduated from Chapel Hill in 2000 and come back to home and started working in the family business. And then Dad said, son, Wadesboro's too small for both of us, so you might want to go and go up to Monroe. And so I come up here and started another insurance agency here, still part of the same group, and have been doing that for a long time, 20 years now. Mm-hmm. And so small business owner here in Monroe. As far as political, I did serve on the county commission in Union County from 2010 to 2014. I have served on the State Board of Community Colleges for about 4 years, from 2015-ish to around 2019 when I took the position at the State Senate. Decided to run for the Senate. Former Senator Tommy Tucker and I have had a good relationship for a number of years, and he come to me and said, hey, Todd, I'm going to step down and retire. It's time. And I remember begging him, like, Tommy, we really need you in Raleigh, because he did a lot of good stuff for Union County. Mm-hmm. And so he said, Todd, I prayed about it, and it's time. Mm-hmm. And so obviously we went and talked to my father, went and talked to my pastor, went and talked to my wife and family, and got it all worked out, and we decided, this is what we need to do. Mm-hmm. And so I have been serving in the North Carolina Senate since January of 2019, and I represent all of Union County except the Fairview area. So there's four little precincts up in the northwest part of the county that I don't represent, but still obviously love Union County, and Amen. Anybody can call me anytime. So.
Yes, sir. Well, and we do appreciate your accessibility, and I've been there in your office in Raleigh, and we've sat together and talked and had prayer together. Absolutely. And so I appreciate that. And you talk about going to Chapel Hill. Now, that would give you great favor with my sons. We're all Tar Heel fans. Good. And so we've had a great time through the years just cheering them on. Sure. And so you have children in school here in the county? I do. We live out in the Piedmont cluster. Mm-hmm. And so my youngest son is he'll be in 7th grade. And he goes to Piedmont Middle. Mm-hmm. And then my oldest son he's a rising sophomore, so he goes to Piedmont High School. Mm-hmm. And so they keep us busy and keep us on our toes. And I'll tell you, I'd be remiss if I didn't tell you that behind every good public servant, there's a spouse. Amen. And without your spouse, there's absolutely no way I could do this, because when I have to be in Raleigh, she stays at home and makes sure that kids are taken care of, kids are fed, clothed, the home stays put in one piece, and also takes care of the 2 pooches that we've got running around Amen. Out there too. A lot of responsibility on the home front. Oh, absolutely. And so, tell us about when the legislature is in session in Raleigh. What would be your typical schedule during that time between home and there? Well, that's a great question. It varies. And so it's almost referred to as Army time, kind of like you hurry up and wait. Mm-hmm. And so typically a typical week during session, I'll leave out maybe Monday, late morning, around lunchtime. Fortunate being here, because it's about 2 hours and 45 minutes. There are members of the North Carolina Senate that can get to 5 other state capitals before they can get to Raleigh. Wow. 6.5 hour drives one way. So we're blessed that we're close enough that it's not too bad of a drive. So we'll leave out on Monday. We'll have session on Monday night. So we'll do votes on Monday night, committees and sessions all day on Tuesday, all day on Wednesday. Thursday we'll have a lunchtime session, and then we try to come back home Thursday afternoon. But sometimes they may hold us over till Friday, and
I've been there on a couple of Saturdays before too. So I remember early on when Tommy come to me the very first time and asked me to run, and I filed. And you as a candidate, you're always looking to see who's filing, who am I going to be running against, because you want to know. And it got down to the last day, and I called Senator Tucker. I said, Senator Tucker, why has nobody filed against me? I don't understand it. He said, Todd, you live in Raleigh 4 to 5 days a week and you make $13,000 a year. Nobody wants this job. You and I are the only crazy people that have ever wanted this job. So I've always thought that was a pretty good way to put it. But it's a lot of dedication, a lot of time from home. But you do have to compartmentalize because it's a very busy schedule. You got to make sure that you still make time for the phone calls and the FaceTime with the kids and with your spouse, and making sure that relationship and bond is whole. And but it's doable, but it is pretty stressful.
Well, and in that regard, it is a true public service.
Truly
You're
so.
serving the public, serving our county, and there's a lot involved in that. And so what led you down that path to want to get involved in politics?
Well, and again, a great question. I get that often. So I guess the initial seed of interest, we'll start there. My dad was an elected official, and you'll hear me talk about my dad a lot. He's my role model. He's my rock, and I always go to him for advice. I feel very fortunate to have a very strong father figure in my life. And he was elected official for 30 years. And I just remember I had both parents that worked, and so we'd go on long, whenever they had a long weekend, like a Labor Day weekend, we would go to historical sites. From the time I can remember, we'd go to Civil War battle sites, museums, etc., all the time on these long weekends whenever they were off work. And so having been around history and politics from the extent that Dad was a school board member, and so kind of following that process, I've had an interest for a number of years. So going back to 2009, being a small business guy in Union County, I was really concerned about kind of the direction of the county and some of the decisions being made. And so after a while, I've heard a gentleman speak. I went to some function, and the guy said, you either need to get out of business or get into politics. And it kind of struck me when he said that. I'm like, I can sit back and try to wait on things to be done and complain about things, or I can actually roll my sleeves up and get in there and get involved. So that's kind of how I got started into the political realm. And then just taking an interest in seeing the direction of our country and our state and even our county at some points in time, and not being satisfied with how things were being done, and feeling like I have something to give. And I feel like I have a skill set that I can offer, but also I'm grounded in what we need, I feel like, in the public arena. And so just, again, a lot of thoughts and prayers about it, and talking to people that I trust and asking for their counsel, and just made the decision to jump into it. And I'll tell you, it's brutal. I have often said, and people want to look at me like really crazy, and I know, Pastor, you've been in Raleigh a few times, and we appreciate what you do coming and praying with us, because even if they don't think like us, and even if they don't vote like us, if I've yet to find anyone that's not there for the right reason. And when I say for the right reason, what I mean is they're away from their families. They're making the same little bit of money. It's costing them to be there, time away from their family, time away from their business, the stress of being called every name but a good name over and over and over. And so you learn that people as a whole are they're good people. But we have a responsibility to make sure that what we feel is right and what we believe in is pushed forward, and we have to stand and fight for that.
Well, and I commend you for that, and I appreciate it very much. You mentioned about prayer, and tell us what role faith plays in your life.
Well, I like to tell people I have a biblical worldview, and I always look at things through the Bible. And I do, when I was talking about compartmentalizing a while ago, it's important that you compartmentalize your time with God also. And because you get caught up in these busy schedules, and sometimes, you've got a 7 o'clock meeting. Well, guess what? That means you need to get up an extra 30 minutes earlier so that you can make time for what's important. Faith and prayer, it's not doable. It reminds me of a picture or something I saw one time that said, as long as there's tests in school, there'll be prayers in school.
Amen.
And that's true. And what we need to do is hope and pray that the folks that are making decisions are praying and seeking counsel from God as they make their decisions. And because the folks, once folks think they've got it on their own, I don't need faith, I don't need prayer, I got it figured out, that's when we're going to get in trouble. And I think some of what you see now on the national and the state level, and I'm not saying one side, if you notice, I'm not saying right or left. I think what you're seeing is some of that. And we've got to get back to the basics and get back to the foundations of the faith. And what I like to always say, what my mama taught me. Because we never asked, Mama, are we going to church? You didn't ask that question because you knew what you were doing.
Amen.
Sunday morning, Sunday night, and Wednesday night, you were at church.
Yes.
And we walked to church because church was 2 houses away. So we walked to church. And if the doors was open, we were there. I feel blessed to have been raised by parents that put the importance of faith in God in my life, because my parents, even today, they remind you, God, family, others, you. And that's the order of importance. I always put others before you.
Amen. And it all comes out of that biblical worldview, seeing things for what they really are from God's perspective, who made us. And I do think that we're seeing the result, the fruit of, as a whole, by and large, there are groups of people who are leaving God out, and then how things begin to come unraveled.
Sure.
And contradict itself. And and all the different things and dynamics that we're facing. So tell us your thoughts about, as far as where we're at as a state, and in response to this coronavirus, and how we're dealing with that, and some of the things we may need to be mindful of going forward.
Well, first and foremost, I think it's important, because I've said this a number of times, thank goodness we're not in control. Mm-hmm. Thank goodness God's in control. We're not in control, no matter how hard we think we are.
Yes, sir.
So this coronavirus is, I like to tell people, it's a very serious virus. And the response, I'll tell you, I've had some concerns about some of the responses to it. I know my pastor, one time, he was giving his sermon, and he was talking about faith in God and having faith. And he mentioned something. I was like, wow, that's pretty powerful. I want to turn around and see who all's walking out, because I mean, it truly stepped on my toes. Mm-hmm. And so he said, it's almost sinful to be concerned and be nervous and be fearful. Because of our faith, we're supposed to have faith. That doesn't mean we can't have concern, but what we do is we take that concern and give it to Him. Amen. And have faith in Him. And so there are a lot of people nervous, and there are a lot of people scared. And so I kind of go back to, as long as there's tests in school, there'll be prayer in schools. I'm hoping, if we can see a silver lining, that this tragedy has drawn people back to faith and got people that may have ventured astray. Even myself, sometimes I get caught up in the world. Sometimes it just happens, but it brings us back. So that's my hope and prayer from that. But the state, we have serious financial concerns with what's going on. We're looking at like probably a 20% cut in the state revenues. So there's going to be a lot of hard hits done to folks that really need and depend on that. And one thing I always challenge my fellow caucus members and members of the General Assembly, I always challenge them when we're looking at budgets. And I'm telling you, Pastor, it's commas and zeros and all this, just tons. And I think our budget's 400 or 500 pages. But I don't care. Pick a page and point at a line. And whatever that line is, there's a person and a family and somebody behind that, or that depends on that line existing for the service that they provide, be it opioids, be it alcoholism, be it some form of program that's designed to help people in that budget. So trying to always encourage folks to keep a personal view and put a personality behind that as you go through it. This is going to be a troubling time for our state. It's not something that's going to go away very quickly, but at the same time, fortunately, the last 10 years, the state has been very frugal with their money. We've had a rainy day fund that we've built up. We've got a hurricane sitting out there right now that we don't know what's going to happen, but at the same time, we're prepared for it. We just have to be diligent, be prayerful, and make sure that we keep things calm, because folks don't need to start freaking out and getting crazy about this thing. It's a scary time. It's a very scary time.
Well, and one thing my wife and I were talking about this morning, I said, if we can't rest in the Lord, where are you going to find rest at all? There is no rest.
And you think about atheists, where do they find peace? Could you imagine not having faith? You know, you and I both had the opportunity to hear a gentleman speak last week in the book he wrote. You know, I don't have enough faith to be an atheist. And you think the faith that it would take to not, I just couldn't imagine life. You couldn't. Where do they find peace? I don't know.
Well, and it's amazing. What an opportunity for the church, for the people of God to step up and speak up and offer the gospel of hope and peace and reassurance. And the time it's the gospel of light in this present darkness. And so may the Lord help us as His people to be a representative for Him during these days. But I want to ask you this before we close. What are your thoughts about encouraging fellow Christians to run for office?
I think it's one of the best things you could possibly do. If God calls you, it's truly a calling. I don't think you can just say, you know what, I'm going to do that, and not talk to your spouse and talk to your family and talk to God. It's okay to talk to God. And it needs to be a two-way conversation. I promise you it will be. Now the problem is a lot of times you may not get the answer that you want, but He's going to answer your prayer.
Amen.
And we need more folks that have a biblical worldview and make decisions. On a little bit more of a down note, if you'll allow, we had a bill come before the General Assembly last year, and it troubles me even today, which is why I'm reluctant to even bring it up. But it was the Born Alive bill, and with the Born Alive bill, simply what it said was, and I don't call it pro-choice, I call it pro-death or pro-life. I'm staunchly against abortion, and I take a little different view. I'm actually against any abortion at any point in time, because I believe, and I know that's a touchy subject for a lot of folks, and some people have had different instances that have occurred in their life that maybe they were put in a situation where they had a tough time with it. So I'm still sensitive about that. But I believe God's hand is a part of any conception, and He's a part of that conception, either in a good situation or a bad situation. There's still a purpose for that life. So we had a bill that where if an abortion was botched and something happened and that baby was born alive with a heartbeat and breathing, that the doctor would have to administer health care to that child. It was vetoed and not passed. We need godly people that have faith in God serving in higher office. And I don't care whether soil and water conservation, dog catcher, President of the United States, on all levels, we need godly people and people that have faith in Jesus Christ running for these seats.
Amen.
That's my opinion. You asked my opinion, so I gave it to you.
And I appreciate it very much, and I concur, because God has called His people to be salt and light, and we're to have a preserving effect, and then we're to give the light of the truth and speak the truth in love so that people can have hope in this hour. And so thank you for who you are. Thank you for what you're doing. We appreciate your service. And we're just praying that God will raise up more people who know the Lord, who love Him, and want to represent Him in the public square. And so we're praying for you and praying for your family and asking God to direct us all during these days. And we'd ask for your prayers and ask you to get involved and pray about how God could use you and your family to be a positive voice for God and truth and country in this hour. Thank you so much for being a part of this webcast today. Until next time, this is Tim Cruse saying, remember, always let your light shine before men, that they may see your good works and glorify your Father which is in heaven.